Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that we recorded this prior to learning that Brandon Miller would be questionable for tonight's game with a left ankle sprain. That's good news for Brandon Miller, who suffered that ankle sprain at the end of the game against the last game that the Hornets played against Philadelphia. And so there were some questions about his availability, not just for this next game, but moving forward. So good news for Brandon, good news for the Hornets in general, who are looking to put together their core players and evaluate them, see if that is truly the future of this franchise. So just want to let you know that it might explain a little bit of my sour attitude this episode. Had I known that Brandon Miller was going to be questionable, I might have been a little bit more chipper. Anyway, enjoy the show.
Bobby Marks releases an article about what each team could do in the NBA this season. What path will the Hornets choose to do? Plus, we'll preview the Washington matchup. And is LaMelo Ball just too darn fast? We'll get to all of that today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. There you can also find his subtext information. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, your favorite pod now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Hornets Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now. LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. Doug's been going solo. I guess I decided to help him out today, so I appreciate Doug holding it down. How was the solo show?
It was great. We all took a vote. We're taking your PS5 back as well. I'm just going to come to your room and take all your tech.
No, you can't take it. Not my Nintendo Switch, which I just got for my birthday not too long ago. It's the only console I have. Please, unless you give me a VIP access, VIP access to Locked On NBA and Locked On Hornets, while also giving me back my PS5. So if I can get a Doug Branson VIP, get to hang out a day with Doug and the baby and producer Cody and see all the magic behind Locked On NBA, I'm in.
Best I can do is a 2014 Hornets giveaway jersey that just has the number 12 on it for 12th man.
Eldon Campbell Beanie Baby, maybe we'll talk. We'll have to negotiate back and forth on what I actually want. We'll see what the Hornets actually want, too, because Bobby Marks drops an article. The NBA trade deadline, quote, big questions needs targets for each of the 30 teams. And the big question for the Hornets here, according to Bobby Marks, Doug, is which direction will the Hornets choose? Charlotte is walking the line between playing vets to help build the right habits under new coach Charles Lee and trading those same players, Cody Martin, Josh Green, Seth Curry is who he has listed here, for future assets. The two younger players to watch are Trey Mann and Mark Williams. But really the big question is, what path are the Hornets going to choose? So maybe we start there, and then if we decide to take the trade those players exit or like acquire some vets to also help build those winning habits for Charles Lee. What do you do here, Doug, if you're the Hornets, and do you have to make that decision now, or are you still trying to figure out the next 8 games or so when you're going to make that choice?
Oh, no, listen, they've got plenty of time to make decisions. The deadline is not until early February. They can't even consider, well, they could consider it, but they cannot trade Miles Bridges until January 15th. That is the last signing restriction they have apart from Daquan Jeffries. So, yeah, I mean, they can do some small deals around the edges to pick up some assets now. And because this isn't about keeping the entire team together, right? Like if they want to make a deal to move Vasa Micic for a couple of second rounders or to help facilitate this Denver, Denver's looking for somebody, and there's a lot of smoke around them and Zach LaVine right now. So if you wanted to help make that happen, could you do that? Absolutely. And you still would have the opportunity to see your core play together. You might not win, and you might not win ball games, which would be beneficial to you keeping the first round pick for next season that you owe San Antonio if you're outside of the bottom 14, aka you make the play in. So you can accomplish all those goals simultaneously. People are like, what are the Hornets going to do? What are the Hornets going to do? And I think it's like they're driving an autonomous vehicle right now. Their hands off the wheel. They're reading a book. Like, they don't have to do anything to accomplish all of the goals that they want to do other than Jeff Peterson, who's got to be on the phones.
Well, I mean, I guess the one goal, you got to have some steering power over giving Charles Lee some players to have winning habits. I mean, because you could take that control away from him. And so establishing a winning culture, you're hoping Charles Lee just establishes that with whoever is suiting up for him. But I think that's the question. Cody Martin, while a lot of people don't like him, polarizing player in Hornets Twitter, do you want to trade Cody Martin away, or do you want to keep him because still it helps you out defensively more than some of the other players? Vasa Micic, yeah, you're probably right. Doesn't move the needle all that much. So Seth Curry also doesn't either. Miles Bridges would be an interesting one. That would be a big-time trade, and you have to wait till January, so that's still a little bit further out. But maybe a couple of these vets that you would decide to trade would establish, I don't really care about establishing these winning ways. We're in asset collection mode, and we have our core in Brandon Miller, LaMelo, and Mark, if you want to count him too.
Yeah, look, I don't think that this organization needs to feel attached to any player outside of LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. That's the list for me. I'm fine with them continuing the Mark Williams experiment, and fingers crossed he stays healthy, because just in the limited minutes that we've seen him since his return, he's absolutely been an impact player on the defensive end. He's, can he shoot? That's the big question mark, I think, in terms of how committed are you to him when it comes to signing him to his next contract. That's when it gets more interesting. But if you want to keep going down the Mark Williams road for another year, I think that's fine. Everybody else, no attachment. Cody Martin, thanks for your service. Even Josh Green, who just came here, thanks, buddy, for the corner threes and the chaos on defense. But if you've got opportunities to make upgrades anywhere on the roster, and I'm not talking about significant go out and find a star or superstar. I'm talking about guys like Isaac Okoro, Austin Reeves, Bogdanovich to add some shooting, even Lonzo Ball, if you want to go down that road and make your superstar happy and get a little perimeter defense added into the mix at low risk, because I think it's a team option or his contract runs out anyway. It's not going to hurt the Hornets to have that contract on the books. Like, I just think all options have to be on the table, really, except for LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller.
Oh, well, and yes, now maybe, I guess, I don't know if I should clarify. I'm talking about selling Cody Martin for assets like draft picks. I mean, you mentioned some of those other players like Isaac Okoro. I think that would go into establishing winning culture, right? But nobody's going to do Isaac Okoro for Cody Martin straight up. That's not going to happen. So that's my question.
Let me get on the phone. Never say never. Just let me get on the phone. I can get quite a deal.
Yeah, I would love it. If you could negotiate that somehow, some way, then that would be fantastic. I just hope that you would be able to pull it off. But that's the issue, right? Are you willing to just give up some of the depth that you have and go to the Isaiah Wongs and just stick with them and trade Nick Richards is another guy that really pops up to me. And
what's the downside? I mean, what is the down? It's already painful. I mean, yes, it can get more painful, but more painful than last season, more painful than the season before that. We are numb at this point. This is like, I don't know that there's any downside to either going off and picking a few opportunities to bring in some role players that fit the Peterson-Lee mindset, or continuing to accumulate assets, because I'm reading this Bobby Marks thing. They've got their first rounders that they're allowed to trade from 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. They've got first rounders from Dallas. They've got a first rounder from Dallas. They've got a first rounder from Miami. And remember that Dallas is only top 2 protected. That's a sweet, sweet deal. And then the Hornets have 7 second-round picks. They already have a lot of assets. Add a few more, and you can, even if you want to be patient and see what you have in this team, you can make 1 or 2 deals, accumulate a couple more assets, and then totally retool this thing in the offseason. There's just simply no downside.
Yeah, The trading stuff, the downside is not having like a respectable enough team. So I guess that's the downside. And if you don't think it's here now,
I don't know who respects this team now.
So you're tank mode, right? Like that. So just that's what it means. It's tank mode if you're getting rid of all these guys for draft picks. That's what you're talking about.
I didn't say all. No, I didn't say all the guys. That's where I'm at. Like if you've got opportunities to make
this is the disconnect because clearly I'm not saying if there is an advantageous offer for Cody Martin out there, then don't take it. Clearly you have to capitalize on it because Cody Martin is far from untouchable, but that's the issue. So you're saying maybe just one instead of just trade all of them for and then of course you'd have to match salary or whatever. Like, I guess that's my question. Are there trade targets that you want to get to on the other side of the break to make this make more sense maybe?
I've named a couple of names. I mean, I think we do have a question from the Sicko Satchel that we can get to from David. He is part of Gastonia's 00 Hawes Battalion from the Sicko Brigade. So he's got a question that has to do with trades. But I mean, I've thrown a couple of names out there. Okoro. I think the Austin Reeves name comes from just the Lakers. They've been interested in Nick Richards. You're not going to do that one for one, but I mean, Austin Reeves is important to that team, but they've got to upgrade their center roster. They have a lot of needs, and I think they're going to be active on the trade market. You may be able to swing something, bring him in, Bogdanovich, Lonzo Ball. I don't know if you have some names, but those are the ones that jump out to me.
Okay, well, we'll see about some other names and answer some questions on the other side. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We rummage through the Sicko Satchel, and we'll still give you a Wizards preview. Coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by Built and Built Rewards. You can earn valuable Built points on your rent every day, on your rent and everyday spending, at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program. The possibilities are endless, and you can access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments, but also just like you do with groceries or travel, you can also earn points there as well. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. So start earning points on rent you're already paying for by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt, B-I-L-T, joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use the link so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning your rewards today. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
Game Time?
Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets anymore. They have all the perks, the Game Time Picks, all in pricing. Toggling that feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, plus lowest price guarantee and Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time?
Game time.
More Locked On Hornets ahead. Okay, if we have a Sicko Satchel question that matches what we've been talking about here, let's get right to it, Doug. What you got for me?
Again, this is from David. He's part of Gastonia's 00 Hawes Battalion. If the Hornets trade Micic, what happens to the backup point guard spot if they don't trade for another one, or if Trey Mann's injury, is a more long-term recovery? The other point guard on the roster besides LaMelo is KJ Simpson, and I can't see them giving him the majority of the minutes there.
Why not?
Now you're coming more on my side.
Well, they've done it already is the point. If you trade Vasa Micic and you don't get a point guard coming back, then maybe KJ is that guy. I know they value him having gone back to Greensboro, so maybe they like him going back and forth. And you would think it's not great to depend on a second-round pick playing valuable minutes and playing significant valuable minutes. But we've seen it a couple of times. I think one guy that comes to mind for me, even though they're different players, but Andrew Nembhard is somebody that comes to mind for the Indiana Pacers, who, was a second-round guard that ended up getting some significant minutes really right away, and he has been an excellent player. You see him start 63 games his rookie season. Doesn't mean KJ Simpson is going to do that, and there are outlier examples of second-round picks getting minutes their first year. It doesn't mean that it's something you want to rely on. But Charles Lee, he's a little James Borrego-y here, Doug, in that he's a mad scientist and he wants to throw out a whole bunch of options and see what sticks. I think seeing the 11 players that played this past time out, you're right. When you said it a couple shows ago, it's probably more so because there is a minutes restriction. But KJ Simpson was giving you some pretty good ball when he was playing. Like, I like him as an older guard too, so it's not like you're throwing an 18, 19-year-old into the fire. I think KJ Simpson was playing well enough. No, you don't love relying on him, but let me ask you this. Has Vasiljevic shown you enough to where you want to hold on to him for dear life because you don't have any point guard depth? And are you willing to sacrifice a possible asset because you value Micic so much? And if the answer to that question is no, which I think that's probably the answer, then KJ Simpson would probably be your guy. Other than that, who else is it going to be? What else are you going to do?
Well, it could be Cody Martin. We've seen him bring the ball up. They had Isaiah Wong playing a little on-ball guard with LaMelo Ball running some off-ball stuff. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, Lee is not afraid to experiment. You don't need so many teams right now are not really running traditional point guards. We talk a lot about defensive versatility, but they like offensive versatility too. Guys that can bring it up, start some action. So, and a significant amount of your minutes at the point guard position are going to go to LaMelo Ball anyhow. If they trade Micic for whatever, for a couple of second rounders or a second rounder, then it's going to be, by committee, point guard by committee.
Yeah, it'll be KJ. It'll be Trey Mann. Hopefully when he comes back, he'll help you out a little bit. There's not a perfect, pure point guard. You got some combo guys. Nick Smith Jr., I don't think you want him running point. You'd feel more comfortable with Trey. And I think Trey, I don't mind him running point. Like, I think he's got more passing chops, even though clearly he's built to score. That's his primary responsibility. I get it. I do think he's got some passing and playmaking chops, but KJ just might be that guy. So as far as the committee goes, Wong, KJ, Trey Mann, I think that's what you would be looking at first and foremost.
I don't know if you saw this, but Dennis Smith Jr. suiting up for the G League showcase.
Dennis Smith Jr. would help defensively. I think, at least he did a couple of years ago. Do we have any other questions we want to get to?
Yes, Adam asks, do you think LaMelo would benefit from learning how to play at 80% his normal speed? Part of me wonders if he's playing at the speed the human body just can't handle.
I like that. Is he too fast for his own good? I really like that. No, I don't think playing at 80% is going to help him more, but is there something here to this question, Doug? Do you think he's going too crazy, going to 100%?
Well, Charles Lee has said in the past that he thinks that LaMelo sometimes, I don't think that he's phrasing it as too fast, but he's carefully phrased it as getting out ahead of everyone else, where we've seen him go, particularly in transition possessions, go it alone. And Tijon Salon does this too, but you expect the rookie to do that. You don't expect the player who's been in the league for a few years and already has an all-star under his belt to do that. But I think that came at the beginning of the season when LaMelo was really pressing a little bit and looking to score first as opposed to get others involved. I think you saw him, in that first game coming back against Philadelphia, you saw him slow down significantly and make plays for others first. So I think, the speed at which LaMelo plays, I think, is dependent on the talent around him and how much he trusts that talent. But if he does play at 100% the speed that LaMelo can go, I actually agree with Adam here. He tends to make more mistakes than make like great plays. It's when he's with a trailing big, or he's with Miles Bridges in these transition possessions, that the big highlights happen. Like, I don't trust him going alone in these transition possessions because he kind of does blow layups every once in a while. So I would rather, maybe not 80%, but whatever, 90, 95%, just slow it down a little, LaMelo.
Well, I mean, I guess getting sped up is something the defense wants you to do. That's known as a good thing. If the defense can speed you up, then that's a good thing for the defense. But I'll say, just in terms of pace, by the way, like, this is a team that is really far down in pace. They're 30th right now. I'm pretty shocked at that number, that a team with LaMelo Ball having played a bunch of minutes this year, even if he had the injury, it's not like last year where he missed so much time. Even when he was in, they were around like the 25 mark. They were still one of the slowest teams in the league. And so with LaMelo, I do think that they're playing pretty slow. They are playing a lot in the half court. I get the mindset we might be speaking of when we talk about LaMelo's speed. Maybe he's playing ahead of his skis or playing ahead of everybody else's skis. I think that's the issue, because you're right. I do think he got more involved in facilitating in the first game back. But the fact that they're so slow in pace, with some of the questions people might have for Charles Lee, maybe some of them are overblown, but I do feel like this team is built to run. Like, you do have a lot of guys who's bad in transition. Miles and LaMelo, those guys have made a living in transition. Josh Green is good in transition. We saw him be an athlete out with Dallas. Who's the other guy? A big that can't run, I guess, as well right now, and Mark Williams. But Mark's sample size is so small right now. It's not Mark that has held this team back in terms of getting out in the fast break. Who's the guy that isn't good that's holding this team back? Maybe Grant Williams, but just like, that's what I'm saying. So Charles, man, they're playing in the half court looking for a bunch of three balls, and I'd like the pace to get faster. I don't like being 30th. I can tell you that.
So here's why the Hornets can't press it like other teams are. They are, I think I looked this up. They're 26th according to Cleaning the Glass in points per possession in transition and frequency. Yeah, they're dead last according to in all transition. Off steals, they're 25th. Off live rebounds, they're 28th. Why aren't they pressing the ball? The teams that press it the most have guys that can handle the basketball and push the pace at nearly every possession. The center can do it, the power forward can do it, the small forward can do it, the shooting guard can do it, and the point guard can do it. That's not the case with the Hornets. They have guys that can run, but they don't have guys immediately when they catch that they know either I'm going to make a great pass here to push the ball up the floor half the court, or I can handle it well enough to get it across half court. It's what excites you about Tijon, because he can become one of those bigs who is capable of doing that. But if you look at the teams that are moving the fastest, they're either playing smaller or they have bigs that can push it. It's not LaMelo's fault that they're not pushing the pass. I don't think it's not.
I don't think it's LaMelo. No.
I think it's personnel. We just talked about all those point guard options that they don't have. When LaMelo's off the floor, everything really slows down. That's the problem.
Yeah, I guess my issue, I hear you. I guess my issue with that is we've seen LaMelo, though, I guess with not the best personnel, and yet they're still getting out in transition. Because even with Steve Clifford, when LaMelo was on the floor, not very much, but even with Steve, they'd still get out in transition, and then they'd slow down because of all of the injuries that they suffered. But they were better at this last year. I guess they had Terry Rozier to help them.
Last year they were 29th in frequency. Now the year before that they were 6th. So that would have been year one with Clifford. They were 6th in transition, 3rd in transition before that. It's those the last two Borrego years and the first Clifford year. So that the last Borrego year where they had I think that was the 21-22 was the year they were points per possession. So that's the interesting thing, right? Is that 3 seasons ago they were 6th in frequency, but they couldn't score it in transition. The year that they had the awesome offense and 40-plus wins, that was Bridges, Rozier, Ball, Oubre, Martin, Mason Plumlee. Remember, he could take the ball. That's a perfect example. Mason Plumlee, a big who could push the pace and sometimes you were like, oh God, Mason, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But he could do it, and he was willing to do it. PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, Jalen McDaniels, another guy that would do that. Ish Smith, certainly great at that, where a backup point guard can push the pace. So that, if I think that plays into my argument. When they were best at transition, it's because they had 4, 5, 6 guys who could do it. To me, that's just not the case this season.
All right, last point for me, though. I get it. I also think the Celtics last year in pace, they were 19th. I think a lot of it's scheme. Because they have the athletes to do it as well. I think.
Oh, well, yeah. And look, great teams don't necessarily push the pace. I don't think Denver does. I mean, there are a lot of elite teams that don't push the pace. Pace does not equal wins. But if you're talking about ways that the Hornets can win, it's not half court. This is not a half court team. This has got to be a team that runs and manufactures easy points if they want to get from 100 points a game to 115 points a game to give themselves a chance to win, because their defense is allowing 120 points a game.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're talking ball.
He's everywhere.
We'll preview the Wizards matchup. Must win radio take time. Coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, we talked about the important stretch over the 10 games that they had after that game against Indiana. That was a nice victory. But they've dropped a couple since then. They lose to Philly after Philly had a couple guys out, and Joel Embiid and Jared McCain. And they lose to Chicago after all the threes in the world were missed. 75 missed threes, which is absolutely ridiculous. They have a game against the Wizards. They need to beat Washington, who has only won 3 games on the season. They did beat Denver, surprisingly enough. They beat Atlanta back-to-back at the start of the season. They started the year 2-2, actually, in their first 4, oddly enough. And then they lost a whole bunch of games until they upset Denver, and that's been it. It would be pretty frustrating to watch this Hornets squad find a way to lose to Washington, even though it happens. And I had a rant last year on Wes and Walker when they lost to Washington. I just hope that we don't see it again.
This 21-22 Hornets team had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'll just go ahead and throw Kelly in here too. They had 12 players who were shooting an average or above average points per shot attempt. Oh man, those were the days. That's insane. I mean, again, got smoked in the play-in, but those were the days. To compare that to today's team, the players that are shooting an average or above average points per shot attempt, I'll give you the list here: Nick Richards, Seth Curry, LaMelo Ball, Grant Williams. That's the list.
Yeah, it's tough. And
Wizards,
and guess what?
They play
Some of those
fast.
guys are injured. Yeah.
The Wizards, they play fast, really fast, and they've got a ton of rookies that are getting a ton of minutes, most in the league this year. The Wizards are pushing the pace, one of the fastest teams in the league. So the Hornets are going to have to commit to getting back on defense. I hope that we're going to see a rotation that somewhat starts to resemble what they had an idea of what they wanted to do in game 1 before the Mark Williams injury, that we get to see more LaMelo earlier in the fourth quarter, that we get to see more Mark Williams in the fourth quarter and spread out through the game. I don't think we've gotten a status update on Brandon Miller yet, but that'll be on every Hornets box score on the recap. Once we should get some news in the pregame update from Coach Lee. So we'll see. I don't expect him to play in this game, but we'll see.
Yeah. And so I guess if Brandon Miller is not going, then you would be pretty vulnerable here to lose to a team like Washington. How important is this one to win, Doug? Or I guess based going back on our first segment, what are you giving up On the season, like, I guess that's the question, and not in terms of how you choose to operate. Like, if they lose to the Wizards and we really are in like somewhat tank mode, then I guess this helps towards a draft pick. I don't want to build losing habits to the point where they're losing to the worst team in basketball. I would like to win this game, and I like to win as many games as possible.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say as possible. I mean, I'm not quitting on the season, but I'm definitely at the point now where it's like, all right, I've seen enough injuries and enough systemic issues where I'm comfortable with them doing whatever is necessary to make sure that they retain the first round pick that I think could actually, be packaged in a way that could significantly move this team in the right direction. I wouldn't feel that way had players stayed healthier, had Trey Mann been a sixth man of the year candidate, had Brandon Miller been a surefire all-star, had LaMelo been in some all-NBA conversations. Then, yeah, I'm not giving up on the season. I'm cheering for, more than a backdoor play-in and maybe even a playoff spot. I'm right there. But I just think at this point, they don't have enough shooting. They don't have enough playmaking. They don't have enough. They still need a little bit more perimeter defense that can also shoot. I mean, there are just so many holes at this point that I'm not giving up on the season. I think you're right. You want to build the winning habits. You want to give Charles Lee, you want to give him, enough ingredients to cook. But I think they should keep their option open. I will say that the same thing that we said a couple of shows ago, which is if you look at this stretch, they've got to pick up a couple wins against Washington just to keep morale alive because they're about to go out on the road and out west into some really tough matchups. And, they might be getting healthy at the right time for that. They could go back into valiant effort season and be competitive. That's all I'm really looking. I think they've got to beat Washington. That's just a pride thing. But when you're talking about some of the other matchups that they're going to be dealing with over the next couple of games, I'm just looking for them to be competitive. Similar to how they were operating when they were missing guys, where they were losing games by 4 and 6 and 1, and whether it was a comeback or slightly losing a lead in the fourth quarter. Like, I'd like to see them do that and be a little bit healthier with this core around, against elite competition and steal a few here and there. I think that's enough to get you to the trade deadline.
Well, and yeah, I guess they are getting healthier, right? I know they lost Brandon, but you did gain LaMelo, you did gain Miles. We're hoping to gain Trey soon, and I'm hoping Brandon doesn't go out for a long period of time. And so if that's the case, remember, I said as possible, right? I don't think winning a whole bunch out west is all that possible. So as possible, carrying a lot of the weight with that. I do want to see when these guys hopefully all come back as much as possible. I get it, right? Lots of injuries, totally understand. The idea is that when your team looks like a normal, healthy semblance of itself, can they actually be competitive and win some ball games? And how does all that look? And that's what I want to see happen. I'm hoping that we're closer to that today than we were a couple of weeks ago.
Normalcy. I think that's what I want to see. I don't really, other than again against the Washington Wizards, because this is a selfish thing for me because I want them to continue to put Washington closer to taking away the shame of the 7-59 Bobcats, the shooting shirt that you're donning there. Like I want that shame away from this franchise. Yep. Maybe that's what lifts the curse. Maybe another team has to come along and pick up the mantle left behind by the 7-59 Bobcats, and that will lift the curse on Spectrum Center. But I want to see a return to normalcy. I want to see an offense that looks like an NBA offense. I want to see a defense that like gives a damn. Honestly, I didn't think they really just in the first half against Philly, which is what mattered in that game. The defense didn't give a damn. They weren't closing out on Paul George. They weren't really doing all that was necessary, except for Mark Williams, to keep Tyrese Maxey away from the rim. And so that's what I want to see against Washington and all of these teams. I want to see a return to the culture building that was starting to happen at the beginning of the season that got derailed not really even with Mark Williams' injury. I think beginning with Trey Mann's injury, things started to unravel a little bit. And whether it's getting Mann back or whatever, I just want to see a return to that.
If the Wizards or another team were to ever have a worse winning percentage than the 7-59 Bobcats, I imagine LaMelo breaking from the ankle braces like Forrest Gump did when he was running and became an All-American at Alabama. I think of LaMelo being free and the Hornets, therefore, being free of the curse that has held us to all sorts of injuries and 0 playoff appearances or wins. Very much so playoff wins for the entire second iteration of the team.
You're right. It would be like Avengers Endgame, and out of the portal steps DJ Augustine, Matt Carroll, Gerald Henderson, Corey Higgins, Rich Cho, Eduardo Nahara was on that 759.
El Nino, baby.
Jamaria Moon comes out of the portal. There's huge blaring music, and the curse is lifted, and wounds heal. It's like when somebody goes back in these Marvel movies and messes with time, and suddenly things start to happen to the bodies, limbs come back. That's what I'm expecting.
Another movie reference. It's the alligator. It's Abe Lincoln for some reason, and it's Chubbs waving to Happy Gilmore as he succeeds. Right? They're all waving. Who are you waving at, Happy? Nobody, Grandma. And then you just experience bliss from there on out. So I'm hoping one day we can wave at the ghost of Chubbs and Corey Higgins. That'll do it. Thank you very much for making us your first listen. We're free, available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, smiling Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can also text him, find the information to text him on everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Doug and David, have you the rest of the way, and then we'll be back a couple of episodes next week, and we'll have to figure out our holiday schedule. But still, we got you updated every day here on Locked On Hornets. Have a great rest of your day.
Kimball Walker also on that team, but we don't talk about that.